Okay, so today being the solemnity of the Immaculate Conception, again, most of us, all of us here went to Mass, maybe some are still going to Mass, and that's completely fine. The reason I couldn't suspend this class is just simply because a schedule, and also because we already have our breaks coming up in 2 weeks. So keep that in mind. Next week we'll wrap up this year and then come back after 2 weeks of that. And I also wanted to take this time in this class to talk about Our Lady of Guadalupe. I just think these are private revelations. Okay, whenever you have, remember, public revelation is whenever public revelation has to be believed by anyone by everyone who calls themselves Catholic. Meaning, if you call yourself a Catholic, you have to believe in purgatory. That's public revelation. It's doctrine. If you don't believe in purgatory, you're kind of already cutting yourself out of what it is to be a Catholic. You might still call yourself a Catholic, but you're borderlining on, well, why don't you just be something else, right? If you don't believe the Eucharist is the body, blood, and soul and divinity of Jesus Christ, I would say that's probably a definitive break with Catholic teaching. Now, if you don't like Our Lady of Guadalupe, believe in Our Lady of Guadalupe, or think it's something necessary for you to get to heaven, that doesn't necessarily make you a bad person, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to hell, or that you've broken any Catholic Christian doctrine. Not at all. I would just argue that you would be the less to not have this devotion. Okay, that you would be the less to not somehow incorporate Our Lady of Guadalupe into your life. As well as many others. Our Lady of Lourdes. My daughter is named Bernadette because of Our Lady of Lourdes. You know, that's why. I've been to that place twice. Really moved by Bernadette. Suffered a lot of penances. I mean, just a lot of suffering. Here's a good movie to watch during Christmas. The Song of Bernadette. Has anybody seen that? Who's seen that? Okay, just kind of like the hardcore Catholics. Okay, but it's a Hollywood movie. Okay, so this is a wide released movie. You know, grab your boyfriend, girls' night out, make some popcorn. You guys invite your girlfriends. I guarantee you, it's enjoyable. It was a movie that was made for the movie theaters. So I know sometimes people recommend religious movies and they're like, oh, it's probably going to be cheesy acting, cheesy this, that. No, it's actually great. I used to show it to my 7th and 8th graders. Every year they would always complain because they were like, oh, Mr. Ricardo, 1950s, you know, they all want to watch Star Wars and lightsabers. And they get so into it, though. They get so into it. They all love it. All you hear is talking about. And even the guys, you know, they're all at the end. I'm like, oh, we're running out of class. No, Mr. Ricardo, let it keep going, let it keep going. So it's a great movie to watch during this break. You can I think you can get it's on YouTube for free. I think the copyrights on it are old, so I think they placed it on there for people to see for free. So otherwise, it wouldn't be able to be shown, right? That sounds right, huh? I think most people probably watch it. Yeah. So I have the DVD, but that's because I've had it for a while. So this is about Our Lady of Guadalupe. Now, Our Lady of France, Our Lady of Lourdes, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of the Pillar, Our Lady of Nog, Our Lady of, Aikido, Japan. Keep going, right? It's all the same Virgin Mary. It's all the same, right? Mary's a mother, well, so what does every mother do? She appears as a mother to her children. Then a mother always wants the child to know in a very real way that she really, truly is that child's mother. And so Mary, in just complete love for us, appears as a mestizo Indian, a European, a black African, an Irish lady. She always takes on the dimension of her child so that the child can come closer. It's one of the beautiful things about Mary. You know, she just, no one is here without a mother. No one. If your mom died at an early age, your mom divorced you and abandoned you at an early age, there's no person in the world without a mother. None. As a kid, we used to always say, Mama, I love you, Mama, I love you. And my mom always would tell us, okay, make sure you love Mama Mary more, Mama Mary more. And you know, as a kid, how do you love Mama Mary more? Like, that's your mom, but as we grow up with this devotion, you know, We were always raised to do a statue, you kiss Mary. My mom right now in her house has a candle burning there for Our Lady at the house. It burns perpetual all the time. We have a statue, a visiting statue of an apparition of our Blessed Mother in Puerto Rico. It's not officially approved by the church, but the bishop has allowed for devotion. Has anybody heard of it? It's Our Lady of, how do you say well in Spanish? No. Something with a P. What did I just forget?
Beso.
I think Beso is, no, not Beso.
Beso.
I don't know, I forgot. So anyways, it's right now she's at our house. Again, this isn't one of the big ones. The opportunity came for the statue to come to our house, and came to our house. We had this little procession, knelt down before our mother. My little kids gave her a kiss on the feet. These are all the things you want to. One, I get, for some people it's very unnatural. Like it's weird, it's just weird. For me, it's very natural. Like I just always grew up going up to the statue of Mary, kissing her on the feet. That's just very natural. I get if it's unnatural for you, don't force it, but learn to kind of cultivate that, and then make it natural for your kids. Make it natural for your kids. So when they come into the house, they see a statue of Mary, they kiss. Right away, my son always wants to bless himself with holy water, and he wants to go around all the statues in the church and kiss them all and pray. So that's very natural. It's the same Mary. This, we're going to talk about Our Lady of Guadalupe. I think this is one of the greatest miracles outside of the resurrection given to human history. Before we do, we should understand a little bit about the history of Mexico. And understand Europeans and Spanish Europeans. If people make out this country has villainized Christopher Columbus as somehow he was this horrible man. Same thing with the Pilgrims, who were not Catholic, but the Pilgrims who came here, and or the Spanish who landed in Mexico. Tell me if I'm wrong, you all went to high school history and you're in college history. Is it not true that they make these people sound out like villains, right? And yet in reality, where would we be were it not for the bravery, the courage, and the virtue of these men, or these people? The original Pilgrims owed a debt of gratitude to Squanto. You ever heard the story of Squanto? Yes, Pocahontas and all that, yes? He was actually enslaved, taken from here, taken to Europe. Now, I probably don't know the full story well, so just kind of. But then he was freed. Why was he freed? Because the Catholic Church publicly prohibited enslaving Indians, or anyone for that matter. The Church has always taken a stance against slavery. He was freed, he was bought, he was brought to England where he was taught English. The place where he lived, his owner, the guy who took him in, out of his own free accord, let him live with them, taught him English, and then gave him enough money to come back to the Americas, where thank God, because of him, that's how we get kind of like the first Thanksgiving movement. Because he was able to speak English to the Pilgrims, who half of them had died because they couldn't survive here, and he helped them survive and see the hand of God and how God works. He takes an evil situation, a bad situation, a man being sold into slavery, but look at all the good that came along from Squanto's life in Europe, the people that freed him, the life he lived, the family that took him in England, taught him English, gave him money to come back. People forget all these things. Christopher Columbus was the man who wanted to do something great for Spain. He had no desire for slavery or even for much wealth. And so we find ourselves with Hernando Cortez and the situation amongst Mexico. So for this talk, I am just strictly reading from two sources. One of them is from EWTN. This is exactly unrelated to Guadalupe. I chose not to deviate from it. And the other one is from a priest friend of mine who gave me the introduction and allows me to use it. In the early 1519s, a daring 33-year-old Hernando Cortez was appointed to lead the third Spanish mission from Cuba to the Yucatan. He left port with 11 ships, 600 men, 16 horses, 32 crossbows, and 13 muskets. Keep the numbers in mind. Again, history wants to make you think that Hernando Cortez is this horrible guy, and the Spanish were these horrible people. But But you're going to see the hand of God in this. He was also armed with a priest and two banners embossed, with two banners embossed with the cross. He said this, "Brothers and champions, let us follow the sign of the cross with true faith, and in it we shall conquer." Modern historians have little patience with the colonizing activities of Christian Europe. But what they indifferently pass over is the reality of pagan lands, in this case the Aztec Empire, objects of this expedition. Mexico was the seat of the most ghastly, institutionalized, satanic religious system ever taken up by man. We're all taught in our high schools and even in our college classes, right, that Native Americans and Native Indians, whether here in America or in Mexico, like somehow they all got along, right? Look at the American Indians. It was really slaughter after slaughter after slaughter. One tribe slaughtering another, and then another tribe coming in and slaughtering that tribe. It was not what everybody makes it out to be. In Mexico, who do you think came to power? The Aztecs. And it was slaughter that was unheard of. Really, I'm not a fan of those Aztec symbols, of people that get those tattoos. I think these. A great movie on this, historical movie on this, is Apocalypto, Mel Gibson's. Yes, have you seen it? Has anybody? If you have not seen it, again, highly recommend it.
What's the title again?
Apocalypto. Apocalypto. It's a really great movie. Okay. It's very brutal, but very historically accurate. So we continue on. And actually, that movie ends. That movie ends with Cortez, the ships with this scene beginning. Cortez's mission was comprised of Catholic men, the likes of which moderns have no experience. So these are men who believed in God and they were real men. They're not like men today who, wear perfume instead of cologne. I don't know, what do they call them? Metrosexuals. So whatever it is. Yeah, bred of 30 generations, resistance to Islamic encroachment of their natives. I'm not talking about my Marines today. Generations resistant to Islamic encroachment to their native Spain. These men did not shrink in proclaiming the sovereignty of God or the forces of evil where it had house sway. So what is Spain? Spain has a 700-year war with the Muslims. These are people who are already known to die for the faith, who know what it's like to fight for Christ. You and I don't know that, you know what I mean? We don't, somebody starts talking about, gay marriage and liberalization of cultures, and you and I stay quiet about our Catholic beliefs. These are men whose grandfathers have died at the hands of Muslims, or they themselves would go off and die just proclaiming Christ. In order to keep these brave men focused on their goal, Cortez commended their mission with utter faith to God and the Virgin St. Mary, and scuttled their ships when landed on the Mexican coastline. They advanced from the shores of Cozumel to mainland and entered a living nightmare. So, what does Cortez do? They get there with their boats. Their boats are on the shore, yes? He's so convinced that God has this mission for them that he burns down the boats, all but one. And he tells the men, if you don't think God is with us, then you leave. I don't want you. So convinced he was that this was God's mission. Think about it. That's faith. This is not something that he's like trying to conquer for a while. He's convinced that this is God, that God has it for him. The Aztec Emperor Montezuma, filled with fear and trepidation, was frozen with immobility as he followed from afar the advance of what he considered divine judgment come upon his kingdom. The Aztecs, again, look at the beauty of this. The Aztecs, in mythologies of their demonic religion, had a strong tradition that a salvific God would come back to them from across the eastern sea in ships bearing white sails with black crosses. This is already in the Indian history, in the Aztec history, before Christianity comes here. This is already in the writings, history proven, documented. This deity was to reestablish himself as Lord of the Aztecs. What is more, this God did not feast on still beating hearts of human victims, for he was a God of peace and the enemy of all human sacrifice. Montezuma was convinced that Cortez was this very God, marching in from the eastern shores to the brilliant Terrence, exotic floating city of Mexico. But the god of his fantastic city was Satan in the guise of an idol named, I'm not going to do the Indian, hummingbird whisperer, whose temple had been consecrated in 1487 by a horrific 4 days of non-stop human sacrifice. offered by relays of priests at 4 altars, 15 seconds per victim, 4 days during which 80,000 human beings had their hearts cut out and held up, still beating to placate the demonic gods. This was the center of the Aztec culture. In one weekend, every 15 seconds, a human heart was being cut out of human history. And this is what you see in Apocalypse. Yeah, no, it's, you know, so again, go to any high school student in history and have them explain to you about the Indians, and they're going to tell you about how they just wanted to farm and live in peace. Just, you know. Again, thank God the Spanish showed up. The tiny band of Christian soldiers who had fearlessly sunk their ships intended to conquer this alien world of 15 million people. How many men went? Does anybody remember? 600. 600. And again, what is the story? The Spanish came over here and they overpowered the Indians. Really? I mean, 600 men against 15 million, of which at least 1 million were fighting men. How's it? This has to be a hand of God. They were frightened by the enormous odds against them. They knew well that the religion holding this world was Satan, whose monstrous serpentine symbols were everywhere visible. They knew he was offered in staggering numbers, sacrifices beating human hearts on a scale that withers human imagination. Well, not anymore, because if you look at how many babies we'll kill, I think we kill some 3,000 babies a day in this country. So it's very similar to the Aztecs. And many of these men met their true God on the business end of the knives of those Aztec acolytes of Satan over the next weeks. On their first and fateful march across the high road in Mexico City, Cortez camped one moonlight night at a mountain pass in a small town, Zoclutan. At Montezuma's command, its chief sacrificed 50 men at the Spaniards' approach, right then and there. While one such Spanish dog, which terrified the Aztecs, they had never seen such large and ferocious dogs, howled the night away, one soldier later wrote an account of this event. In Zoclutan's central plaza, next to a small temple, were racks of human skulls arranged to make their calculations simple. He wrote their number was 100,000. 100,000 human skulls. Against all odds, in climactic battles in which the devil certainly struck viciously the heel at Our Lady's warriors, battled to crush the head of Satan's power, the dark potency of evil which held sway in the place was overturned. An image of the Virgin, St. Marian, was set up in the carnal house of sacrifice, perched on the summit of Mexico's chief pyramid. These men certainly, by God's extraordinary aid, did in fact bring down the Aztec Empire. And they were not primarily seeking gold, though there can be no doubt that gold occupied the thoughts of some. Again, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say people did not take advantage of this. They did. Some of Christopher Columbus's people did too. Some of Cortez's. But shouldn't we all thank God that Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas? Yeah, then I wouldn't be here. Shouldn't we thank God that the Spanish came to Mexico? Yeah, then I wouldn't be here. Imagine where we'd be. You know, and then they constantly talk about, well, they just brought their diseases and this, that, and the other. You know, think about it. They were not okay, so Hernando Cortez urged his men, and we have his diaries, Hernando Cortez. We are obligated to exalt and increase our holy Catholic faith, which we undertook to do like good Christians, uprooting idolatry, that great blasphemy to our God, abolishing sacrifices and the eating of human flesh, so contrary to human nature and so common here. And from the other side of the Emperor Montezuma said, we will be judged and punished, and however it may be, and whenever it may be, we can do nothing but wait. Montezuma already knew he was at his end. I leave to your reading a more detailed account of the frightening, edifying, gripping details of this highest adventure in all Christian history. But a further observation is needed. Remember, this was 1519. With the destruction of the Aztec power came the utter ruin of its gorgeous central city, an unavoidable side effect to Satan's absolute grip on this shocking realm and its unique religious culture of death. The Aztec people then fell into a vacuum. A people once plunged in darkness were bereft of even that. The native peoples, hopeless victims to the heart-eating demons of their culture, now languished in the aftermath of conquest, only to become, soon enough, new victims of Spanish greed. Yes, that was a problem. Now you got people coming in, taking advantage, and now you have a problem. By 1531, a dozen Franciscans had managed to evangelize about 200,000. The Catholic Church said that no man is to be forced to be a Christian. 1519, 1518, Hernando Cortez gets there. By 1531, only 200,000 of 15 million Aztecs have been baptized and converted. And here's where we pick up with the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Again, a little background history. In the 16th century, the Blessed Virgin Mary, moved with pity for the Aztec people who, living in darkness of idolatry, offered to their idols multitudes of human victims, dying to take into her own hand the evangelization of these Indians of Central America, who were also her children. One of the Aztec gods, originally considered the god of fertility, had transformed himself over time into a ferocious god. A symbol of the sun, this god was in continuous battle with the moon and the stars and was believed to need human blood to restore its strength. If he died, life would extinguish, ever new victims to be offered to him, and perpetual sacrifice, therefore seemed essential. Aztec priests had prophesied that their nomadic people would settle in a place where an eagle would be seen perched on a cactus, devouring a serpent. This eagle appears on the Mexican flag today. Having arrived on the swampy island in the middle of Lake Texcoco, the Aztecs saw the foretold sign. An eagle perched on a cactus was devouring a serpent. This was in 1369. There they found their own Tenochtitlan, which would become Mexico City. I think I said that. If I didn't, just forgive me. The town expanded to become a city on pilings with many gardens abounding in flowers, fruit, and vegetables. This is kind of like Babylon. Okay, so this is like the Old Testament. But anyways. The organization of their Aztec kingdom was very structured and hierarchical. The knowledge of their mathematicians, astronomers, philosophers, architects, doctors, artists, and artisans is excellent for that. Nobody ever says these people are dumb. Intelligent, precise with their math. Okay? But that doesn't make you good. Sometimes our own intelligence can make us the most villainous people ever. But the laws of the physical world remain scarcely known. The Tenochtitlan drew its power and wealth primarily from war. The conquered cities had to pay tribute of various foodstuff and men for war and sacrifices. The Aztecs' human sacrifices and cannibalism were almost unequal throughout the course of history. We don't see anything like it. In 1474, a child was born who was given the name Guadalupe, speaking eagle. After his father's death, his child was taken by his uncle. From the age of 3, he was taught, as were all young Aztecs, to join in domestic tasks and to have a dignified manner. At school, he learned singing, dancing, and especially the worship of many gods. The priests had a very strong influence over the population, whom they kept in submission bordering on terror. Guadalupe was 13 years old when the great temple to Tenochtitlan was consecrated. Over the course of 4 days, again, the priests sacrificed 80,000 human victims to their god. After his military service, Guadalupe married a young woman of his social class status. Together they led a modest life as farmers. In 1519, the Spaniard Cortez, this is what I just told you, but this will be a summary, disembarked in Mexico. He left, this says 500, but I gave you 600. He conquered the country for Spain, yet was not lacking in zeal for the evangelization of the Aztecs. In 1524, he obtained the arrival of 12 Franciscans to Mexico. These missionaries quickly integrated into the populations. Their goodness contrasted with the harshness of the Aztec priests, as well as that of some of the conquistadores. They began to build churches. However, the Indians were reluctant to accept baptism, primarily because it would require them to abandon polygamy. You're a man, you're going to enter this new religion, you got to give up your 4 or 5 wives. Who's going to wash the dishes, take out the trash, raise the kids? At least 5. But that's kind of how they saw it, right? But God's trying to give them something more. Guadalupe and his wife were among the first to receive baptism under the respective names of Juan Diego and Maria Lucia. After his wife's death in 1529, Juan Diego withdrew to Topetac, 14 kilometers from Mexico City, to the home of his uncle, Juan Bernardino, who had become a Christian as well. On December 9th, here's the story, 1531, as was his custom every Saturday, he left very early in the morning to attend Mass, celebrated in honor of the Blessed Virgin, at the Franciscan Fathers' churches close to Mexico City. 14 kilometers, that's a long walk. I mean, you could barely go to Mass, and you can get in a car, and it's probably 10 minutes away. This guy religiously would walk 14 kilometers to Mass every Saturday morning. He walked past Tepeyac Hill. Suddenly, he heard a gentle and resounding song that seemed to come from a great multitude of birds. Raising his eyes to the top of the hill, he saw a white and radiant cloud. He looked around him and wondered if he was dreaming. All of a sudden, the song stopped, and a woman's voice, gentle and graceful, called him, Juanito, Juan Dieguito. He quickly climbed the hill and found himself in the presence of a very beautiful young woman, whose garments shone like the sun. Speaking to him in Nautel, his native language, she said to him, Juanito, my son, where are you going? Noble lady, my queen, I am going to Mass in Mexico City to hear the divine things that the priest teaches us there. I want you to know for certain, my dear son, that I am the perfect and always virgin Mary, mother of the true God, of whom life comes, the Lord of all things, creator of heaven and earth. So, perfect, immaculate conception, Virgin Mary, her perpetual virginity, mother of the true God, right? Mary, the mother of God. And she's appearing to him, this is rare, in a physical form. There's very few apparitions where Mary appears physically. She appears spiritually, kind of like a see-through transparent. This was a physical appearance, meaning you could touch the skin. For Catherine Labouré in France, Our Lady appeared to her in such manner, because her mother had died at a young age, so she always wanted to know what it's like to be held by a mother. And so Mary appeared to her very physically so that she can hold her and so she can rest her head on her lap. So this is very, very rare. So the four Marian dogmas, right, two of them haven't even been pronounced by the church, are right here being proclaimed to Juan Diego. So when people say, wow, the Immaculate Conception, you guys just, in 1850, the church defined it, it's already here. Sorry, buddy. Yeah.
Where are you reading that out of?
This is a printout from EWTN, and I can email the link out to everybody. Yeah, I'm reading verbatim from this, because why change? I mean, I'm giving my commentary, of course. I greatly desire that a church be built in my honor, in which I will show my love, compassion, and protection. That's great, my protection. My son, every night when he goes to sleep, he says, Papa, I'm scared. I always tell him, he's scared. I don't know if he's scared. Too much Star Wars, I guess. And I go, why are you scared? And then he goes, Papa, who's going to protect us? And I go, you know who's going to protect us. And then he starts going, Mama Mary, Joseph, Jesus, St. Michael, you know, and, you know, these people are protected. It gives us consolation. After that, my son, that's our routine. Every night he does that. After we do the I'm scared thing, then he falls asleep. Mary wants us to know that she's here to protect us. We're all children before God. Learn from your kids. I mean, that's just the beauty of it. You know, what man here or what person here hasn't gone to sleep at one moment in their life and gone to sleep with dread and fear? If you haven't gotten to that point, you'll get to that point soon enough. Okay, all of us experience that. I'm assuming for the men in the military, that's probably even a reality, you know, more than most. I am your mother, full of mercy and love for you and all those who love me, trust in me, and have recourse to me. I will hear their complaints, and I will comfort their afflictions and their sufferings, so that I might show all my love. Go now to the bishop of Mexico City and tell him that I am sending you to make known to him the great desire I have to see a church dedicated to me built here. And Juan Diego went straight to the bishop, Bishop Zumárgaro, a Franciscan, the first bishop of Mexico. He was a poor pious man full of zeal who had a heart overflowing with kindness towards the Indian. His cause, I think he's already a venerable, if not a blessed. He heard the poor man attentively, but fearing an illusion, did not put much faith in his story. Towards the evening, Juan Diego started on his way home, still December 9th. At the top of Tepeyac Hill, he had the pleasant surprise of meeting the apparition again. And he told her about his mission, and then he added, I beg you to entrust this message to someone more known and respected, so that he will believe it. I am only a simple Indian whom you have sent as a messenger to an important person. Therefore he didn't believe me, and I don't want to greatly disappoint you. Again, when God calls you to do something, it's not like it matters what you are. God's the all-powerful, right? It doesn't matter who you are. Who was Jonah? Jonah was nobody, but God called him, right? Who was Elijah? Elijah was nobody. He was, you know, a coward at one point, right? But God called him. Who was Peter? Again, it's not, you know, sometimes how many times, like, when I used to tell David to teach the class, I used to tell David, well, just teach. He goes, I don't know as much as you do. How much do I know? I don't know that much either. I mean, it's not about you, it's about God. How many men who I've talked who desired the priesthood or thought about the priesthood, like, wow, I committed all these sins, and you look at my life and my past, and like, who cares? It's not, that doesn't even play into the equation. As a matter of fact, it's because of those things that God calls you. Because then, the world can see that it's not about you and it's all about Him. The greater glory is given to God. That's the beauty of it, right? So, Juan Diego kind of shows us that perfectly. And also, don't just try to kind of, dig out an excuse for yourself. My dearest son, replied the lady, you must understand that there are many more noble men to whom I could have entrusted this message, and yet it is because of you that my plan will succeed. Return to the bishop tomorrow. Tell him that I myself, the Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of God, who I'm sending you. Again, definitive. On Sunday morning after Mass, Juan Diego, so now December 10th, Juan Diego went to the bishop's house. The prelate asked him many questions, then asked for a tangible sign of the truth of the apparition. When Juan Diego went home, the bishop had him discreetly followed by two servants at Tepeyac Bridge. At Tepeyac Bridge, Juan Diego disappeared from their sight, and despite all their searches on the hill and in the surrounding areas, they could not find it. It's not like he was walking through New York City. Okay, this is Mexico City, the outskirts of Mexico City. You can't, what did they do? Lose it behind a cactus? You know what I mean? So again, the two guys who followed him were going to look like fools, so they had to go back and tell a fanciful story. Furious, they declared to the bishop that Juan Diego was an impostor who must absolutely not be believed. During this time, Juan Diego told the beautiful lady who was waiting for him on the hill about his most recent meeting with the bishop. Come back tomorrow morning and seek the sign he is asking for, replied the apparition. So now it would be December 11th. Returning home, the Indian found his uncle ill. The next day, he had to stay at his bedside to take care of him. So the next day, December 11th, he stays with his uncle. As the illness grew worse, the uncle asked his nephew to go look for a priest. At dawn on Tuesday, December 12th, Juan Diego started on the road to the city. Approaching Tepeyac Hill, he thought it best to make a detour so as not to meet the lady. He knows he has a, think about this, look at how well he was catechized. He knows he has a vision from God. His uncle's dying, and what's the first thing he's thinking about?
That's right.
A priest. Because he already knows that's what God has already given to him. That's well catechized, right? He wants to go, what's the best thing for him to do? Get a priest to his uncle before he dies. I mean, he must have had someone like me as his catechist. Okay? Probably something, no, it's good. But suddenly he perceived her coming to meet him. Embarrassed, he explained the situation and promised to come back when he had found a priest to administer the last rites. He's got the Mother of God, and he's like, look, Mom, I'd really like to take care of it, but I gotta go get a priest. Like, that just goes to show you, like, how, the priest was God. Had the hand of God. I think it's St. Francis who said, I think it is, I'd have to go back and take a look. If I were to meet an angel and a priest, I would bow first to the priest and then the angel. Right? I think that, and St. Francis was a man who was never ordained. My dear little one, replied the apparition, do not be distressed about your uncle's illness, because he will not die from it. If you ever wonder why Mexicans, when they meet a priest, what do? They kiss his hand, right? It's very common to kiss his hand. Because those are the hands of God. Just consecrate the Holy Mass. This is also in Mexico or in other cultures, this is why a lot of traditionally when people would receive communion, you would only receive from the priest and only in the mouth, right? Because it was this idea that you receive. It was very concrete and very real. Now, the sex scandals of the church, that kind of affected a lot of that, and that's unfortunate. But every Sunday Mass every Sunday after Mass, I tell my son to go give Father Vargas a hug. Father Vargas is so used to it. He goes, oh, here comes my hug, Again, so he can, that's, who's that? That's the priest, that's God. He's representing God. I don't tell him that's God, I'm just saying he's God's, he works for God. I assure you that he will get well. Go to the top of the hill, pick the flowers that you will see there, and bring them to me. When he had arrived at the top of the hill, the Indian was stunned to find a great number of flowers in bloom. December 12th, Mexico desert, flowers in bloom. Castilian roses that gave off a very sweet fragrance. Indeed, in the winter, the cold allows nothing to survive, and besides, the place was too dry for flowers to grow there. Not only that, there were actually flowers and roses distinct only to what part of the world? Spain. Never seen before in Mexico. He thought that was the miracle. Like, that's it. That's the miracle. The bishop's going to believe me now, simply because of these flowers. And Juan Diego gathered the roses and folded them into his cloak or tilma, then went back down the hill. "My dear son," said the lady, "these flowers are a sign that you are to give to the bishop. This will get him to build the church that I have asked of him." And Juan Diego ran to the bishop. When he had arrived, the servants made him wait for hours. Amazed at his patience and intrigued by what he was carrying in his tilma, they finally informed the bishop, who, although with several people, had him shown in immediately. The Indian relented his adventure, unfolded his tilma, and let the flowers, which were still shining with dew, scatter the floor. With tears in his eyes, Bishop Zumargama fell to his knees, admiring the roses from his country. And he was homesick. All of a sudden, he perceived on the tilma the portrait of Our Lady, Mary. Mary's image was there as though printed on the cloak, very beautiful and full of gentleness. The bishop's doubt gave way to sure faith and hope filled with wonder. He took the tilma and the roses and placed them respectively in his private oratory. The next day he went with Juan Diego to the hill where the operation had taken place. After having examined the site, he let the seer return to his uncle's house. Juan Bernardino had been completely cured. His cure had taken place at the very hour Our Lady appeared to his nephew. He told him, "I have also seen her. She even came here and talked to me." Same time she appeared to Bernardino. By location, right? It's against the laws of physics. You can't be in the same place, same time. But Mary can. Our Lady of the Pillar. This church is really neat. This is the first. You know, Our Lady of the Pillar is the first apparition. Mary was still alive. This is why this church and this apparition. It was the most visited. Our Lady of the Pillar was the most visited Marian shrine in the world for the first 1,000 years.
Wait, where was the original?
The apparition, it appeared in St. James in Spain. You can see the pillar of those. She appeared while she was still alive, living in Ephesus, John. So, pretty cool. See, you learn something new every day. Well, here you learn something new that you haven't known your entire life. So, let's see. Oh, so he told them, "I have also seen her. She even came here and talked to me. She wants a church to be built on Tepeyac Hill and wants her portrait to be called St. Mary of Guadalupe. But she didn't explain to me why. The name Guadalupe is well known by the Spanish because in their country there is a very old sanctuary dedicated to Guadalupe. I've also told you this too. In the Battle of Lepanto, right? Remember I talked about that on October 7th? One of the images, the main images on one of the boats that fought against the Ottomans, the Turks, it was the image, it was a replica of this image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Okay, so well known, already well known and well loved amongst Catholic Europe. The news of the miracle spread quickly. In a short time, Juan Diego became well known. "I will spread your fame," Mary had told him, but the Indian remained as humble as ever. To make it easier to meditate on the image, Bishop Zumargama had the tilma transported to his cathedral. Then work was begun on the construction of a small church and a hermitage for Juan Diego on the hill of the apparition. The next December 25th, the bishop consecrated his cathedral to the Blessed Virgin to thank her for the remarkable favors with which she had blessed his diocese. Then, in a magnificent procession, the miraculous image was carried to the sanctuary that had just been completed on Tepeyac Hill. To express their joy, the Indians shot arrows. One of them, shot carelessly, went through the throat of a participant in the procession, who fell to the ground fatally wounded. A great silence fell, and intense supplication rose to the Mother of God. Suddenly, the wounded man, who had been placed at the foot of the miraculous image, collected himself, got up, full of vigor, and the crowd's enthusiasm was at its peak. An instant miracle right there at the party. I'm just imagining that. Now, this is just, think about this. This just happened, 1531. The Indians are witnessing. This is the only catechism that they have, is this image. Juan Diego moved into his little hermitage, seeing to the maintenance and the cleaning of the site. His life remained simple. He carefully farmed the field close to the sanctuary and had a place at his disposal. He received pilgrims in ever large number and enjoyed talking about the Blessed Virgin Mary and entirely relating the details of the birth. We have details, exact details of what happened because of all these people. I mean, there's no like, oh, maybe he got it wrong. No, we have countless of stories that he told to different people that are written, and they're all the same. Never deviate. Never deviate. and countless people. The bishop who witnessed it, you have his writings, and then the other people who witnessed it, you have their writings. There's no deviation. Remember, this is, what, 500 years ago? Not even 500, 490 something? He was entrusted with all kinds of prayer intentions. He listened, sympathized, and comforted. A good amount of his free time was spent in contemplation before the image of his lady. He made rapid progress in the way of holiness. Day after day, he fulfilled his duty as a witness up until the death on December 9, 1548, 17 years after the first apparition. Exactly 17 years after. And how did he die? Just regular. Saint Andre Basset, if you know him, he's from Canada. Does anybody know of him? Yeah. You do know of him. All he was a simple doorkeeper. That's all he was. Just a simple man who was a doorkeeper, a religious priest, and that was his task of a religious community. Didn't preach great homilies, didn't do anything. Open the gate, close the gate. He became a saint. Faithfully devoted himself to the work of God. Juan Diego, after this great apparition, what does he do? He just forms the line and prays. What's your goal? Your goal is to get ahead. That's it. Your goal isn't to be famous, to be great preachers, great teachers, to be catechists. Your goal is to get ahead. That's it. Whatever God wants him to do, that's your goal. Okay, continuing. When the Indians had learned of the news, Our Lady's of Apparition, and enthusiasm and joy such had never been seen before spread amongst them. Renouncing their idle superstitions, human sacrifices, and polygamy, that must have been hard, many asked to be baptized. 9 years after the apparition. Cortez, 1518 to 1531. How many conversions? 200,000. Right? And what is that? 11 years? 12. He's going to count. I'm just testing him because I want to see if I'm going to keep it. So here we are, 9 years, okay? So 9 years after the apparition, 9 million Indians converted to the Christian faith. And if you take any history class, they're going to tell you how the Spanish forced the Indians to convert to Christianity. Get the same amount of priests, in less time, 9 million converted. Nearly 3,000 a day. Listen, they weren't forced. Our mother came to them and invited them. The details of the image of Marian moved the Indians deeply. This woman is greater than the sun god, since she appears standing before the sun. So when you go to Mass, just look at that image. It's so moving. She surpasses the moon god, since she keeps the moon under her feet. She is no longer of this world, since she is surrounded by clouds and is held above the world by the angel. Her folded, look at this, look at the catechism. She's greater than their gods, in front of the sun, greater than the moon, right? She's not of this world, held up by an angel. Her folded hands show her in prayer, which means she's not God. God doesn't pray to herself. It means she's this great figure that's done these great things for them, but she's not God. So now they know she's not God. There's somebody else doing these miracles who's using her. All of that without saying a word. This is amazing. Even in our time, the mystery of this miraculous image remains. The thedema, a large apron woven by hand from cactus fibers, bears a holy image, which is 1.43 meters tall. Has anybody been to our Mexico City? Raise your hand if you have. Yeah. Have you seen the image? How old were you when you saw it? 15? Okay. Now, and you probably, if you were to see it now, it'd probably be different. I'm sure.
I'm going to go in January.
Oh, you are? Oh, you're good. Okay, so check it out. If you could think about when you were 15 when you saw it, you kind of just saw it and you're like, right? But once you go, Doug, and I'll give you my honest truth. When I saw it the first time, it was like way up there. There were so many people, and it was like, oh man, I wasn't really moved. Just wasn't really moved. But there was mass going, so we stayed for mass. I probably also wasn't moved because we did this procession, right? We went from our knees like a half mile out, all the way up, so my knees were bleeding. They were literally bleeding. You know how have you been there, Elizabeth? You know how it's like really rocky on that top part, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, we set out to do it, and I was like, I should have never made this promise. Because it was like me, at the time my fiance, my godson Tim, and his mother who had just gotten dementia, and that's why we went.
That's why me and my sister are going because we made a promise that we're going to.
Oh yeah, nice, right. And so one of the mandas I did as a young man, even before I met my wife, was, that I would pick the right vocation to God. Not necessarily for the sign, but that I would just pick the right one. And there I am engaged, you know, to my wife and state. So that was my way of thanking God for helping me make a choice. Right? It's a decision we have to make. So anyways, maybe that took away from the movement, right? But then after you go around the first time, and I guarantee you not, the second time it just hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like, this is it. You know, outside of the Eucharist, and this is the profound thing. Outside, I went to Mass twice a day, but outside of that, this is one of the greatest mysteries we're witness. Right? Very profound, very profound. So, 1.43 meters tall. The Virgin's face is perfectly oval and is gray, covering Virgin on pig. Her eyes have a profound expression of purity and gentleness. The mouth seems to smile. The very beautiful face, similar to that of a mestizo Indian, is framed by a black head of hair. Up close is compromised of silky locks. Now, if you look at her hair closely, it's hair, like it's locked. It's like real hair. That's how you see it. So now we're going to start getting into a lot of these details, and I'm only going to give you the iceberg. She is clad in a full tunic of a pinkish of a pinkish red hue that no one has ever been able to reproduce. The color has yet to be reproduced. NASA tried, they couldn't do it. It's yet to be reproduced. And that goes to her feet. That pinkish color, they have not reproduced it. Her bluish-green mantle is edged with gold braid and studded with the stars. A sun of various shades form a magnificent background with golden rays shining out. The fact that the tilma has remained perfectly preserved from 1531 to this day is inexplicable. After more than 4 centuries, this fabric of mediocre quality retains the same freshness and the same lively colors as when it was new. Think about this. By comparison, a copy of the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, painted in the 18th century with great care and preserved under the same climate conditions of Juan Diego's, had completely deteriorated in a few years. I think the longest they were able to carry a replica made out of the same fabric, in the same condition, I think the longest is 21 years. I think. I want to say 14, but I'm just saying 21 to be very conservative. That's the longest they can, without it deteriorating. You understand that, right? He's not wearing like Levi's. It's not a Levi's t-shirt. Okay, it's made of just casting fibers. It's going to just naturally disintegrate after time. At the beginning of the 20th century, a painful period of the revolution in Mexico, a load of dynamite was put by unbelievers at the foot of the image in a vase of flowers, or a vase. The explosion destroyed the marble steps on the main altar, the candelabras, all the flower holders. The marble altar piece was broken into pieces. The brass Christ on the tabernacle was split in two. The windows in most of the houses near the basilica were broken, but the pane of glass that was protecting the image was not even cracked. The image remained intact. So you had these communists. You know about the Mexico's persecution in the early 20th century? If you have not, I'm giving you a list of great movies. These are seriously date movies. I guarantee you won't be disappointed. So I've given you The Song of Bernadette. I've given you, what else did I recommend? Apocalypto. I'm telling you, this is Christmas break, this is great. And now I'm going to give you, what is it called? For Greater Glory. For Greater Glory. Okay, this is the socialist communist movement in Mexico to get rid of Catholicism. But one of the things they wanted to do is blow up that image. And that's what they did. They put dynamite by that image to blow it up. Now the glass that was in front of it was not the fiberglass stuff that protects the president. It was just glass. That's all it was. Nothing happened to the image. 100 years before this, they were moving it from one place to another because of some efforts that they had to redo. It was pouring rain. And you know in Mexico City, when it just rains, they have that tropical storm that just doesn't stop and it'll go for like 3 days straight. Well, this was one of those storms. And they had to move it from one place to another. From the moment they get out to like right when the porch stops, everything stops raining and it completely dries out. Not even water trickles down from the top. It just all stops. They go across the street, take the image where it needs to be, and then everything just resumes again. Countless stories you hear about this, just countless stories. In 1936, an examination conducted on the 2 fibers of the tilma, one red and the other yellow, led to an outstanding finding. The fibers contain no known coloring agent. There is no paint. There's nothing. They can't tell. There's no paint on the tilma. You can't detect it. Ophthalmology and optics confirm the inexplicable nature of the image. It seems to be a slide projected onto the fabric. It's like it's hovering, right? I mean, these are non-Catholic, non-Christian people who investigate, study this. This apparition it's left open for people. They probably do it about once every 50 years or so. The last time they did it was probably in the 70s or early 80s. So this is what they're finding. It seems to be a slide projection onto the fabric. Closer analysis shows that there is no trace of drawing or sketching under the color, even though perfectly recognizable retouches were done to the original. Retouches were moreover have deteriorated with time. So, 100 years before, they thought, well, let's do this. They did, the people did it themselves. Well, those at that point have faded away, but the image still remains. In addition, the background never received any primer, which seems inexplicable if it is truly a painting. For even on the finest fabric, a coat of primer is always applied, if only to prevent the fabric from absorbing the paint and the thread from breaking the surface. No brush strokes can be detected. After an infrared analysis conducted on May 7, 1979, a professor from NASA wrote, "There is no way to explain the quality of the pigments used for the pink dress, the blue veil, the face and the hands, or the permanence of the colors, or the vividness of the colors after several centuries, during which they ordinarily should have deteriorated. Studying this image has been the most moving experience of my life." I believe you converted that. Oftentimes when I speak with atheists or friends that I know, before or maybe even after trying to, each other person strokes their ego by showing off their intelligence and whatnot, I get tired and say, well, how do you explain Our Lady of Guadalupe? How do you explain that image? Go YouTube it. Find an explanation for that. And there's some very boring YouTubes on Our Lady of Guadalupe, and by I mean boring, it's like some scientists talking about it. But it's so fascinating because he's just giving you detail after detail after detail. I used to show this to my junior kids. They would be like, Mr. Garley, he sounds boring. But then like 5 minutes into it, when class would always be, wait, just let it keep going, Mr. Garley. Just let it keep going, don't stop it. Because they're just giving you all these details. Astronomers have observed that all of the constellations present in the heavens at the moment of Juan Diego's opus tilma before Bishops of Magna on December 12, 1531, are in their proper place on Mary's mantle. So the constellations are on her mantle. It has also been found that by imposing a topographical map of central Mexico on the Virgin's dress, the mountains, rivers, and principal lakes coincide with the decoration. So the stars, right, are on her exactly the way they were then, and also the map, exactly, the topography, exactly the way it was in Mexico. What is Mary? Queen of Heaven and Earth. That's who she is. She's the Queen of Heaven and Earth. Ophthalmological tests have found that Mary's eye is a human eye that appears to be living. When examined, it gives us the rules, or what you're examining is like you're examining a living eye. And includes the retina, in which is reflected the image of a man with outstretched hands, Juan Diego. The image in the eye conforms to the known laws of optics, particularly to which states that a well-lighted object can be reflected 3 times in the eye. You ever see those, the Dr. Seuss books? If you have them for your kids, do you have them for your kids? You know how they have the one about the body? I don't know if you have them, we have a bunch of them. There's one about the body, and it gives you the human body, the skeleton, the parts. And it does the eye, and when it does the eye, Dr. Seuss takes you through the Cat in the Hat takes you through how the eye reflects an image and does it upside down and then inverts it. It's an image of an image, right? And how our eyes work, and how what we see. So anyways, that's this law. In Dr. Seuss's book, it tells you this law and it explains it for kids. So that's what you see in Mary's eye. A later study allowed researchers to discover in the eye, in addition to the seer, Bishop Dumagama, and several other people present when the image of Our Lady appeared on the tilma, and the normal microscopic networks of veins in the eyelids and the cornea of the Virgin's eye is completely recognizable. So, when they studied it, I think on one of those videos that we saw, it was like some Asian scientist, non-believer, non-Christian, non-anything, that he fainted after he just fell to the ground. He couldn't believe, it's as if he was looking into a human eye. could not believe what he was seeing. If you look, if you examine the eyes of Mary, of Our Lady of Guadalupe, on the dilma, which are not painted, which is not on the dilma, which somehow flows over, which are colors that can never be replicated, if you look into those eyes, you're seeing a human living eye that is following the laws that our eyes follow. No human painter would have been able to reproduce such detail. This was 1531. They didn't even know about this law. How would they have drawn all that detail in those eyes? As a matter of fact, we didn't know about it until just now.
That's what I was going to ask. They didn't know at that point about the triple thing.
And they didn't know those images were in there until, you know, the 20th century.
Oh, you can't even see it. Unless
No, you can't see it. They never, yeah. It's got to be with the microscopic view.
Is this image that?
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
Let me see it. And you know, there are different renditions, but this is it. Like, this is how it looks, right? We've all kind of seen it. Yes? Oh yeah, there it is, but that one's kind of more colorful. So I want to kind of give you kind of like the original, like, and you can tell it's naturally taken on some creases because of the fibers and the movement and all that, right? But it's still, this whole thing is completely still a miracle. But you know, the constellation of the stars are on her, the topography of the map is on her. We'll get into some more details. You see the eyes? Like, the people wouldn't have known about the eyes. Like, Juan Diego died never knowing about that miracle. Right? And like, Bishop Zumargara died. Is it okay if I pass this around? Okay, just don't drop this one. It's very expensive. It's a Samsung. I like that new commercial with the guy who finally dishes his out what it is. Okay, so, I mean, I'm telling you, man, for you guys, if you have kids, anybody, I used to teach this in junior high. This is exactly what I teach. Exactly. This is it. It's nothing I wrote. You can't beat this. Like, my kids would just be like, what? That can't be, Mr. Parado. And then they would always be like, well, how come the atheists even exist? Like, right away, right? Like, my kids are already like, they come to me in 7th grade thinking that God doesn't really exist and they're just going to Catholic school because that's what their moms want, right? But afterwards, you know, they're like, wow, this is, you got to be dumb not to believe in God. Then they like start, and you know how kids can be, you know, they're just very blunt and forward, you know. Gynecological measurements have determined that the virgin in the image has the physical dimension of a woman who is 3 months pregnant. Under the belt that holds the dress in place, at the very location of the embryo, a flower with 4 petals stands out. Now this is how, again, this whole image is teaching us, or teaching the Indians. The solar flower, the most familiar of the Aztecs' hieroglyphs, which symbolizes for them divinity. Mary's holding her hands, she's 3 months pregnant, this flower is there. What do the people believe? That that baby she has in there must be God, the real God. The center of the earth having time and space. On the Virgin's neck hangs a brooch, the center of which is decorated with a little cross recalling the death of Christ on the cross for the salvation of all mankind. Again, telling the Aztecs, the very cross that was in your history that you knew nothing about, here's what it's all about. Many other details of the image of Mary form an extraordinary document of our age, which is able to observe them thanks to modern technology. Thus, science, which has often been a pretext for unbelief, helps us today to give prominence to signs that have remained unknown for centuries, that science is unable to explain. The image of Our Lady of Guadalupe bears a message of evangelization. The Basilica of Mexico is a center from which flows the river of light of the gospel of Christ, spreading throughout the earth through the merciful image of Mary, John Paul II said in 1981. In addition, through her intervention on behalf of the Aztec people, the Virgin played a role in saving innumerable human lives, and her pregnancy can be interpreted as a special appeal on behalf of unborn children and the defense of human life. This appeal has burning relevance in our time, when threats against the lives of individuals and peoples, especially the lives of the weak and defenseless, are widespread and becoming more serious. The Second Vatican Council, this is one of the church councils of this past century, forcefully deplored crimes against human life. All offense against life itself, such as murder, genocide, abortion, euthanasia, All these and the like are criminal. They poison civilization, and they debase the predators more than the victims, and militate against the horrors of the Creator. Faced with these plagues, which are expanding as results of scientific progress and technology, and which benefit from the wide social consensus of, as well as legal recognition, this is talking about, legal cloning, legal abortion, taking human embryos to use them for scientific experiment. That's against church teaching. All of these things in the name of progress. We're appealing to our Blessed Mother. He's doing that in this life. Let us call upon Mary with confidence. He is an incomparable model for how life should be welcomed and cared for. Showing us her Son, she assures us that in him the forces of death have already been defeated. Death and life are locked in an incredible battle. The author of life, having died, lives and reigns. Let us ask Juan Diego, canonized by John Paul II on July 31st, 2002, to inspire us with the true devotion to our Mother of Heaven. For Mary's compassion extends to all those who appeal to her, even when this appeal is nothing more than a simple Hail Mary. All you need for Mary to come to you, a simple Hail Mary. Especially if we have fallen into serious sin, she, who is the Mother of Mercy, will obtain for us the mercy of God. Bishop Fulton Sheen, if you don't know who he is, look him up on YouTube. He's one of the greatest Catholic evangelist preachers on TV in history, probably. He won 2 Emmys. You know what the Emmys are, right? They're awards for the TVs. I'm asking if you know, because I don't know a lot of this stuff. Right, Oscars and Emmys, Grammys. But anyways, I know he won 2, being the most watched show in America. Some 50 million viewers tuning in to watch a Catholic bishop in a Protestant country preach to them. That's profound. Anyways, he always wanted to die on Saturday or some feast dedicated to Marian. Well, he died on December 9th. December 9th is dedicated to Juan Diego, which is the first day of the apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe. So St. Bishop Fulton Sheen got his wish, right? He got to die on a Marian day. From December 9th to the 12th is all wrapped with Our Lady of Guadalupe. So that's it. That's Our Lady of Guadalupe. Again, one of the most profound, most miraculous images that we've ever known.
You guys ever get a chance to go? I've been to the Basilica 3 times, and it's probably one of the most beautiful things you can ever do. You don't have to go to Europe or anywhere else. You just go right across the border, go down to Mexico City. The plane will leave right out of here, out of John Wayne Airport. You can stay real close to Airbnb, or you can stay, you can actually camp out. They let people from all over the area to camp out right in the church.
Which is starting already now. So, right, people could already, it's
Yeah.
already allowed by the city that you can now, because it's leading them to December 12th.
And then go in every single building on the grounds there.
Yeah.
Every single building there means something. There's churches, there's the old church is there, the new church is there.
The new church is very modern, not my cup of
Yeah.
tea. But the old church is
The old
around
church, you
really
can go in
nice.
that one.
Yeah.
We even went in the library too, in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had all these different relics and stuff back there.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. And then when you travel around Mexico City or out in the country area and stuff, there's people that will actually walk from 100 to 200 miles to the Basilica with their little virgins on their back or in their backpacks and stuff. They'll be walking, or they'll be riding their bikes. They'll be in the back of carts with the horses, pulling the carts with the whole family inside the carts. Everywhere, coming down from all the mountains, everywhere, just to go there and have their virgins blessed and just be there from the 9th until the 12th. Which I think we're thinking about taking a motorcycle trip next year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, doing a round trip. But
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, but anyway, it's and then I've been I was in Juan Bernardino's church, which is like 14.
Yeah, he was in the church dedicated to the apparition, which we don't hear about.
I was there on the 11th.
Yeah.
At night.
Which is when she appeared to
Right when, and then I was there on the 12th.
Yeah.
We went there around 11 o'clock at night. We were there at midnight, and I swear there was about 35 mariachis came in, just off the street, and they came in and they circled around the whole church inside. And they just were playing the most beautiful music that you could ever hear. I mean, just like an orchestra.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you ever go to Mexico City, there's festivals everywhere, and it's just unbelievable. It's beautiful. I couldn't believe it. It it's a miracle just seeing all that stuff happening.
Here's the sad thing, Mexico is losing its Catholic identity at a pretty fast rate.
Yeah.
We don't think about this, but what Doug is saying about Mexico used to be sort of France. On the great feast days of Europe and France and Notre Dame and Lourdes, France, we don't, if you know anything about history, France was considered the eldest daughter of the church. I mean, France was the most Catholic of Catholic countries. And now today, she is less than 50% Catholic. And the fastest growing religion, if I'm not mistaken, somebody can look this up, in France is Islam. Okay, so, you know, that just goes to show, meaning, people need religion. You know, if Christians are going to pull back, the Muslims are ready. They're ready to come in and evangelize. They're ready to give, because the Muslims believe that people need God. I'm not talking about like radical jihadist extremists. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about, you know, Muslims come from Middle Eastern countries where, you know, it's still people die and live for the faith. You know? And so they know that man is nothing without God. And yet in Europe and in America and in Mexico, we're losing that because we think the government and technology is going to give us everything. And there is no need for God. I mean, just look at your own lives, and look at your own lives, but what, 6 months ago, and how you lived it. With little accord to God. Right? And hopefully my goal is that by now, there's intrigue, there's desire, there's at least this, yeah, I want this, I want to do this, I want to learn more, I want to try to change my life. You know, that crazy guy, he's making sense. Right? I'm hoping that's the goal. But it's true. This great image that we have, that Mexico has, and really the image is so profound that that image is, it's not even, Mexico takes this great pride, and Mexico should, right? Because that was, for some reason, that's like the Jews, right? God picked Israel. There's a pride there to be had. However, it's a pride to bring other people closer to God, where Mexico now is like losing that identity. And they want to be more like secular Americans and allow abortions, allow marriage to be whatever you want, consumerism and things of that nature. And it's a very, very sad thing for those of us who have family from Latin America. The beautiful thing about Our Lady of Guadalupe is that she transcends. She's an image that's beloved by anyone in the Americas, from South America all the way to the Canadians. You know, everybody considers that apparition as like part of the Americas. She's the reason for the founding of the New World. Not Columbus, not Cortez, but Our Lady.
In Juan Bernardino's church, if you go underneath the altar, and his house is down underneath there, and he had all set up, it's minimal. They've since changed that.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure.
But they have a spring that comes up right in the middle of the church, and you get holy water right there out of this spring that comes up. It's pretty cool. And you can build a little store right next door to this one. Well, a few nuns. Yeah, the nuns all live there, and then they come out and they sell goods and stuff in the church, and buy these little things that go away from the spring. And your little virgin of water.
Of water.
I have one. I'll bring one. I gave you one, didn't I?
I'm not sure if you did. My cousin gave me one for sure. Okay, so there you have it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not done. I'm going to use 10 more minutes of your time. Keep this in mind, though, that Our Lady of Guadalupe, December, today is the day of obligation. Miss Mass today is a mortal sin. Today, unrepentant mortal sin means you go where? And you don't want to go to hell, right? I don't want to go. December 12th is not a day of obligation. It is in Mexico. However, December 12th has such a high ranking in places like California, Arizona, and Texas because of the Mexican population or Latin American population. So although you do not have to go to Mass on December 12th, you'd be the lesser if you did it, meaning you should go to Mass. It's a great day. It's cultural. The Mañanitas, for those who want, people go really early. Why do they go really early? Because that's when Juan Diego went to Mass, right? Really early in the morning. So he had to get to morning Mass. He had to go 14 kilometers. I mean, he was walking out of his house at what, 3 a.m. That's why we call it the Mañanitas, right?
It's a long walk because I've been from that church to this.
Yeah, that's why the mariachis. That's why there's a Mass held at most churches at around 4:30 or 5 a.m. because that's what Juan Diego did, and that's where it is believed somewhere around that time the apparition took place. But you don't have to go to the morning mass. You can go to the one the night before. Really, the festivities start from the night before, all through the day. Take your kids, take your families, make it a date night. December 12th is Tuesday. Okay, so it's a great day. If you got a day to take off of work, take that day off. If you didn't take the day off. But it's good. Culture, you want to start making a part of these things a part of your identity, a part of your culture. You do not need to be Mexican to have this be a part of your family. My godson, who is through and through white, he's my godson. He's godfather to both my kids. He sings the Spanish hymns. He speaks Spanish. His story is funny. He evangelized through Mexico as a Protestant, converting Catholics because he believed that all the Catholics were going to hell. Now he's a Catholic and he regrets ever doing that, and now he feels like, oh man, I got to make up for that. God has a funny way of working things out. I met him outside of the abortion clinic. So that's an interesting thing, right? We both shared this cause, and after praying, he would decide, and then we would get to talk. We got to having lunch, and then I started asking him. He would ask me these. He was very intelligent. And he would ask all these questions, and I'd answer. I never really pushed him. But after about a year, on and off, it was Christmas time. He went to a mass, Latin mass. He was so moved by it that he just became Catholic. And one of the books I gave him, rather than debate him and talk to him, I just said, "Here, read this." It was St. Louis de Montfort, True Devotion to Mary. He still brings it up to this day. He said, "Why would you give that to a Protestant?" He said, "That's the most random, foreign thing that you can give to a Protestant." And I said, "Well, I figured all or nothing, Anyways, so now, picking up our theme on where we're going to be next week and how I'm going to end this class for this year, we've talked about Moses in the burning bush, Elijah, Elisha, and the way that God uses the material creation to communicate his miracles, meaning he gives his miracles through these items. In the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and I'm going to kind of gloss over this, not have you open it for the sake of time, the Church teaches that Old Testament events, persons, or things are foreshadows of the New Testament. The Old Testament prefigures the New Testament. So when we see something like the crossing of the Red Sea, or things in the Old Testament like Moses and the serpent and how people are cured, those are all shadows of what's going to happen in the New Testament. For instance, Peter, the first pope, talks about how the waters of Noah prefigured baptism. In Acts chapter 7, and Paul throughout his writings, he calls baptism the new circumcision. So this idea that in the Old Testament, if you were a part of God's people, like if you were going to call yourself a part of God's people, you had to do these rituals and have these signs. For a household, the males would have to be circumcised. Otherwise, you were not a part of being in right relationship with God. I just did a talk on Romans and talked about justification. That's probably going to be a little bit too much here, but to be justified is a legal term, means to be found not guilty. But in the Old Testament, justification was not simply a legal term, although it had that. But whenever you went into court, a Jewish court, the court would rule, not that you were not guilty, the court would rule that you were in a right relationship with God, that you were in the covenant with God. And that's what justification is. So, as we begin to look at the sacraments are the signs that allow us to know that we are in a right relationship with God. This is the most profound thought in the Old Testament. Covenant. Covenant is it. Like, that's the most profound thought to a Jew. The Passover, the greatest feast. But what was the Passover for? It was about the covenant. The only time Jesus uses the word covenant is at the Last Supper, when he institutes the Eucharist, before he's about to die. Basically, Jesus is saying, now if you want to be in a right relationship with me, two most crucial things are baptism in John 3 and the Eucharist at the Last Supper. If you are not partaking of the 7 sacraments, you are not justified. You are not in a right relationship with God. And therefore you find yourself outside of that relationship. Now what is a covenant? A covenant is not a contract. The Hebrew people had a word for a contract, the hosen. A contract is between properties, between goods and services. So, Doug, you put in some screen windows on my house, I'll pay you X amount of dollars. If he only puts in 3 and I wanted 5, he's only going to get X amount of dollars. Or if I have somebody do some concrete work, and the concrete work isn't done right, I don't pay. That's a contract, okay? A covenant, a berith in Hebrew, does not only involve, so it involves goods, peoples, and services, but it is an exchange of persons. In a covenant, in Ezekiel and throughout the Old Testament, God says, you shall be my people, and I will be your God. A marriage, who's here engaged? Who's going to get married to next year, early next year? Who's getting married next year? You guys are, you are, and one of you, right? You are? Okay, when you get married, it's not like, okay, you're going to stay home, cook dinner, and wash the dishes. I'll go to work and provide and do that. That's part of it. That's the contract. That's part of it, right? But it's this. You're mine. You're mine. And I am yours. All of you is mine. And all of me is yours. It's profound. Think about that in the context of a Hebrew, an Israelite, 3,000 years ago. God is saying to the people, you're mine. All of you are mine. But at the same time, he's saying, I am yours. That's big. Remember when God says, or Moses says to God, who shall I say sends me? And then God gives the name, right? I am who am. And Joseph Ratzinger tells us, what does it mean to give a name? Or remember in Adam and Eve, what does Adam and Eve do to all of creation? What does he do? He gives it a name, which implies ownership, dominion, which means he can call on it, right? So God introduces this to Moses, this very idea. So in the Old Testament, now I'm not going to get too much into the Old Testament, we read about how God is taking them through these covenants, because man always breaks up. Man falls, and so God has to do a new covenant. He falls, God has to do a new covenant. In Jeremiah 31:31, in the Old Testament, it talks about a new covenant, an everlasting covenant. And so now, what I want you to understand is that with the 7 sacraments, right now with Christianity, Jesus, who is God, he leaves us a covenant, a new covenant in his blood. Jesus is the mediator of this covenant in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 24. This covenant is new, it's everlasting, which means there is no different covenant. There is no other quote-unquote religion. What is religion? Relegare to bind. What's another word for religion? Relationship. Wow. I love it. He's a Marine. You're the Marine, right? I don't know if you are too, are you? Anyways, this relationship. So, is God pleased that people have a multitude of relationships? Now, people can have a multitude of personal relationships, and that's not what I'm... You know, one time Joseph Ratzinger was asked, Pope Benedict XVI, how many ways are there to heaven? And he said, as many as there are people. And that is true. But when I'm talking about the relationship defined by covenant by God, it can only be one. Otherwise, these prophecies of the Old Testament don't hold water. Now, how do you seal this covenant? You seal these covenants liturgically with rituals. Rituals in every case of the Old Testament were essential to the relationship. Indeed, they were often treated as equivalent to the covenant, for they were divinely established signs of covenant. So Sunday, was the Sabbath for the Jew, was an outward sign. So, rituals. How many times have you heard from people, oh, you Catholic with all your rituals, stand, sit, kneel, sign of the cross, holy water. It's all ritualistic. And then you got to look at them and say, well, isn't your life ritualistic? You wake up in the morning, you wash your face, you brush your teeth, right? You kiss your babies on the lips, you say, I love you, you go out the door. It's all ritualistic. I mean, what man kisses his wife every day and says, I love you, honey, I'm leaving for work. And like every day he means like, I love you. Like it's that powerful. Like Jerry sometimes is just like, yeah, I love you, I gotta go. He's on call, right, Jerry? It's not, he's not having that like, that deep, profound meaning like he had on his wedding night, right? But that ritual is essential. It's part of the covenant. Before I came to teach, I'd go home, I'd kiss my baby. I'm home for like 10 minutes. And before I leave, I'd say, oh, Papa, where are you going? Where are you going? Oh, yeah, I forgot to give him a kiss. It's part of the ritual, the relationship. So the rituals are essential. So I'll leave with this, and then we're going to come back to this. Promises, vows, and oath. A promise is I give my word, my name, I sign my honor. That's a promise. That's you. You promised you're going to do something. You're doing it. It's on your name. A vow is more weighty than an ordinary promise. It is a promise made directly to God. Right? So people who take vows, or people who make promises to God, that's more weighty. Jesus says, let your yeses be yes and your noes be no. So we give God our word. So justice is to give the person due what's according to that person. If I make a promise to you, I give it according to the justice due to you. But what's more important? A promise made to you or a promise made to the president? Which is more important? A promise made to the president, right? Because of the honor. A promise to the Queen of England, right? A promise to God. Yes? You're seeing now where this is going. That's the difference between ordinary promises and vows that we make. Now, an oath is an invocation of God's name as a witness to the truth. Now, this is actually in the Code of Canon Law. So now, an oath is based upon a promise, but you seal that promise with the very words, by God, in God's name, so help me God. And now when God's name is used in an oath, he becomes an active partner in the transaction, in the promise. And the Catechism and the Code of Canon Law actually talks about this. Now, when I break a promise, whose name is at risk? Mine. If I don't keep my promises, I become the guy that promises are worthless, and that's the reputation. Now, if God is in a covenant, if I brought God down to that oath, right, and God's honor, now, if that fails, if I don't keep my word and I brought God into the equation, then I've somehow sullied God's honor. I've gone scandal. For those of you who are getting married, you give the sacrament to each other, you make the promise to each other, but you bring God down as a witness. And you make God an active participant in your promise. And now you have to understand why divorce is severely, it should be one of the most grievous sins that we should talk about throughout all the Americas. Divorce should be the sin. I mean, people are talking about gay marriage, we should just talk about divorce. It's God hates divorce, the Bible says. Think about that. So this is huge. A false oath triggers the most dire consequences. In the legal system, perjury under oath is punished severely. So, I'm going to close with this real quick. In Deuteronomy chapter 30, this is one of my favorite passages to read. And really, Deuteronomy 30 and 31. The great two chapters right there. Deuteronomy chapter 30, 19 to 20. And you can actually read the whole chapter. This is pretty neat. Verse 30, chapter 30, verse 6, Deuteronomy. Whoever has it, what's the page number? Does anybody have it in the Bible?
218.
218, Old Testament. If you want it, you don't have to go to it. But Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 6 says this, and the Lord your God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your offspring, so that you will love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your life. And the Lord your God will put all these curses upon your foes and enemies. So, circumcision was a physical sign. You know what circumcision is, right? Cutting off the foreskin, right? Very painful. Now, let me tell you the story. It happened to Abraham. He was 99 years old. Imagine having to circumcise yourself at that age, and Ishmael, your son, at 13. Well, okay. But circumcision was only the external sign, meaning the rituals and everything that we do externally, if it's not in the heart, it's pointless. Now that doesn't mean Jerry kissing, Lori, hey, I'm off to work, bye, love you, hon. That doesn't mean because he's not internalizing at every moment, because his whole life is internalized by his commitment to his wife and to his children. Do you see how that's playing out? If he were to leave and do all that, or if he were to say, Bonnie, I gotta go to work, I love you, but he's off with other women and having adulterous affairs, or vice versa, then it doesn't do any good that he's keeping the covenant. He's damning his way to hell, you know. In Deuteronomy chapter 30, it goes on to say, let's go to 15. See, I have set before you this day life and good, death and evil. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command to you this day, by loving the Lord your God, by walking in his way, by keeping his commandments and his statutes and his ordinance, then you shall live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land which you are entering to take possession. If you obey God's commandments, his ordinances, his statutes. What does it mean to obey the ordinances, the statutes, and the commandments? It means if you're going to be a part of this relationship, and if you fulfill your part, God's going to fulfill his part. Right? What is it, Nicole? Crystal and Nicholas. Sorry, I was going to say Nicole and Christian. I got you guys back. That relationship is defined. It's defined. Oh, you're getting closer to, when do you get married?
Next year, October.
October. When are you getting married? May. Okay. Hopefully you guys are talking about like how this is going to play out when you're married. Right? Like there's going to be, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Here's my goal in this marriage. What are you going to do? And all of these things are playing out in the relationship. They should, and if you're not having these conversations, you better. I'm sorry, but you better. Okay? Just do it now. Okay? Because the marriage hasn't taken place yet. Okay? You got that? Remember, she forgot the date. I don't know if you want to hold that against her.
Actually, the day we're getting married is 12 years ago.
Oh, exactly?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
So I know.
Now she remembers.
I
Now. But she said, I better do it this way before I forget.
Yeah.
But you see this play out, and then some people look at it and are like, oh, well, God, all these rules and regulations, and it's like, wait, you have the same thing in your relationship. Your kids have the same thing. This is covenant. And God says in 19 to 20, he says this, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life, that you and your descendants may live, loving the Lord your God, obeying his voice and clinging to him. For that means life to you and length of days, that you may dwell in the land which the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob, to give to them. Whoever takes up this covenant must take the oath, its form, its terms, its commandments, its statutes, its ordinances. Remember what I just read? To enter into this relationship, you're taking on its forms. What are its forms? Baptism, confirmation, Eucharist, confession, Mass on Sundays, prayer, the rosary. Its terms. You're in mortal sin, you go to confession. Your wife's a horrible person, she's been a horrible person for 10 years. You can't divorce her. That's its terms. Offer that up. That's your cross. That's it. I mean, think about how profound that is. That's so foreign. If I were teaching some college class in California, all the women would be like, oh, you're so chauvinist paper, just for saying that people should stay married forever. Right? I mean, it's profound. But that's what God is saying. Who makes the terms? Who makes the ordinances? Who makes the commandments? You are God. God. And God is good. So, I leave you with that thought. We're going to come back with that next week. I'll close out this part before we enter into the sacraments, baptism, confirmation, and all that next year. So with that, let's close in prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Let's ask Our Lady of Guadalupe, the Immaculate Conception, the ever-perfect, ever-Virgin Mother, to protect us, our lives, especially those affected by the fires right now, their families, their homes, and of course the continual tension in the Middle East, and Christians being persecuted. For these and all our intentions we pray, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Our Lady of Guadalupe, pray for us. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, you got 3 great movie recommendations, guys. 3 great movies. Do it. Date night, girls' night, popcorn.